and welcome to our webinar. Hello, everyone, and welcome to our webinar, Creating a Simulation Culture to Accelerate Growth and Change in the Age of Agentic AI. This webinar is sponsored by BTS Group and is eligible for HRCI, SHRM, and ATD Professional Development credits. I'm your moderator, Claude Werder from Brandon Hall Group. I'm joined today by two women who know more about the strategic use of simulations than about anyone I know. Jessica Skon, CEO of BTS Group, and Jody Rennick Kohner, a board director, strategic advisor, and former EVP of Global Enablement for Salesforce. A warm welcome to both of you.
Thank you.
A big thank you to BTS for sponsoring today. BTS is a global consultancy that helps organizations turn strategy into action by equipping their people with the skills, the mindsets, and behaviors to lead, sell, and perform when it counts. BTS partners with senior leaders and teams to accelerate leadership performance, drive transformation, and create lasting business impact from the C-suite to the front line. Before we dive into today's content, let me tell you about a few opportunities with Brandon Hall Group and kind of what we do. We're a leading professional development firm, and we've been serving learning talent and HR executives worldwide for more than 30 years now. We've advanced the growth and performance of millions of employees and leaders through our cloud-based platform, delivering evidence-based research, data, and certification programs that empower organizations to achieve excellence in every area of human capital management. Our impact spans millions of employees and executives globally, supported by our research library, our strategic insights, and prestigious awards program that many of you are aware of and have probably won awards in. The slide shows a sample of the organizations we are proud to partner with. And speaking of awards, our Excellence in Action Awards are still accepting applications for just a couple of more days. The cutoff is October 17th. Beyond recognition, we have incredible learning and networking opportunities. Our conference, the Excellence Conference, is February 9 through 12, and the registration is open. We're holding an AI summit in Florida tomorrow, and another summit on women in leadership, also in Florida on November 19th. You're also invited to participate in any of our research studies, and we do several a year, and those links to take the surveys are at brandonhall.com. All details and applications for everything I've mentioned, along with the presentation today, will be available in PDF that you'll receive within 24 hours of the webinar. A few logistics. If you have any questions during the webinar, and we hope you do, please feel free to put them in the questions panel as you go. We may answer some in the flow of the session, but we'll also leave some time at the end. The chat box is also open, so feel free to share your thoughts as we go along. We'll encourage you to do so. Anything you can add, your own experiences, your thoughts as we go, can be very valuable for everybody. At the end of the webinar, we'll select one lucky raffle winner to win a free submission to our Excellence in Awards Action Program. So please stick around. You must be present to win. And so let's get rolling, huh? Today's agenda, we'll talk a little bit about the past and the present of simulations and why the future is now, why everything has changed, and why this is the time to really drive a simulation culture if you haven't already. We'll share a lot of different information about how to drive behavior change through simulations, creating a simulation culture. We'll wrap everything up at the end, have Q&A, and BTS also has a special offer to share to help people drive their simulation culture and experiment with simulations. So let's get started with a little research. AI has completely changed the development and scaling of learning simulations. In this year's Brandon Hall Group Excellence Awards, 70% of winners in learning and leadership development said they were using or getting ready to use simulations. The graphic shows the wide variety of simulations used by award winners. AI and VR-based simulations still have lower use in these statistics, which were done toward the beginning of the year. But most of the award-winning organizations we've talked to, and we talked to most of them, are revving up now and beginning to take concrete steps forward. Just a couple of years ago, using simulations and learning was an afterthought or a pipe dream for most organizations. Despite their proven impact on learning retention, behavioral change, and business outcomes, our research showed that less than 10% of employers were using simulations on a regular basis. And now you see the change in just a couple of years. With AI and other advances, what once took months and significant investment can now be deployed in weeks. What was once available only to senior leaders can now reach frontline managers and emerging talent. And we wanted BTS to talk about this topic because they've really been at the forefront of the simulation movement for decades, making simulations work when few companies even tried. And BTS was a pioneer in business simulations. It's helped hundreds of enterprise organizations to use them to accelerate their strategy execution, drive their culture change, and develop leadership capabilities at scale. So now they're removing the final barriers that have kept simulation-based learning from becoming truly pervasive. Jess and Jody are going to tell you how to make simulations part of your culture. But before I turn it over to Jess, we want to hear from you in the first of 3 poll questions to kind of get a sense of where you are in your journey towards simulation. So poll number 1, pretty simple, straightforward question. To what extent does your organization currently use simulations in learning, enablement, and/or leadership development? Is it extensively integrated now in all your programs? Is it used in only select programs, maybe high potential? Are you piloting or exploring? Maybe just planning and hoping to implement over the next year, or not using them at all and maybe not thinking about it? So the results are coming in. We'll see what people say. I think things are slowing down a little bit. So I'll stop here. And so, not surprisingly, about 35% of the folks on our webinar today are not currently using simulations. So hopefully we can help you get started. About 26% are using in selected programs, maybe high potential programs. 24% are piloting or exploring. This is kind of what our research shows, that people are just getting started. This is a perfect place for you to be to learn how to drive forward. So with that, I will turn it over to you, Jess.
Thank you very much, Claude, and hello, everybody. Yeah, to Claude's point, look, for 40 years, we've been having a blast with many of you on trying to figure out what is the best way to help our clients either shorten the change curve for some initiative that they're trying to drive or overall improve performance across hundreds of thousands of people, and at the same time, also empower and strengthen our clients' cultures to make it more adaptive and high-performing. And if we think about simulation culture and what we're talking about, from what I can see, and to just reiterate Claude's point, like now is the moment to actually be able to take advantage of this and make it more pervasive. But I see it coming from 2 forces. And if we could move forward, please. The first quote, actually, I heard from Amazon, and this was probably 7 or 8 years ago. But what they told me is that everything we're going to do in the talent function, so across the talent lifecycle, selection, onboarding, all of our learning and development, succession readiness, assessment readiness for the next job, driving change, driving alignment, is going to be done through simulations. And I said, okay, why? And they're like, why? 1, because we're Amazon and we're unique. And I don't want to have any waste in getting people ready for the next job or understanding the Amazon way, the Amazon culture, our strategy, decision-making, financial models, and so forth. Number 2, they work. It's the most efficient way to drive a behavior change or to drive alignment as we continue to shift the company quickly. So this was Amazon. And I remember thinking, okay, we're philosophically totally aligned and they're rich. They can afford this. If I think across all our other companies at that moment in time, it takes quite a long time to build high fidelity simulations and use them at scale. And so that's like one force is just we're seeing the growth of this in the last decades becoming more of a common tool. The second force is possible now because of high performance computing. And there is no greater force on the planet than NVIDIA right now. I was at a Wall Street Journal CEO conference in London back in June, and Mari Barra, the CEO of GM, made a point to say, before we launch our new factory in upstate New York, we just did a full simulation of the factory. every detail we work through cross-functionally as a company. Why? Because it will save us billions of dollars in capital in mistakes. If you simulate something first, you'll be much more ready with accuracy to then execute. So you have the force from talent and learning and enablement, believing in simulations, but it's been a little bit too slow to get at scale. And then you've got the force of what's possible now from a high-performance computing operationally across an organization. And I think what's going to start to happen, and is already starting to happen if we go to the next slide, is companies are going to be able now to prepare themselves, both at the executive level and all the way down to the front line, to imagine and experience things before they do them, right? They can try out new strategic scenarios. They can imagine new users and the user's experience with their products, new operating models, new ways of working, new jobs, new financial improvements, new customer conversations. Maybe there's a safety incident and you want to quickly teach everybody how not to do that same thing, or a new operational best practice in the Singapore plant, and you want to teach it to the team in Virginia. And what's possible now is you can do this, and this is the key point, fast and cheap. Before, it used to take months and quarters to build high fidelity interventions and simulations that nobody would forget. Now you can do it fast and cheap. Claude, back over to you, I think, for a poll.
Yeah, so we'd like to get a sense of some of the challenges that you're facing and the challenges that have prevented maybe a wider adoption of simulations in your organization. And you can select all that apply on this question. So resistance to new learning approaches, budget constraints, too expensive, for instance, or ROI concerns, being able to make a business case, lack of executive sponsorship or support, technology limitations, or difficulty measuring business impact. It could be one, it could be all, it could be a few. We'd love to know what is the biggest barrier that you're facing, and then we can address some of those with you today. So answers are still coming in. It looks like the leading barrier is budget constraints and ROI concerns, which I think is really not a surprise. 86% of you have faced that. Another 54% feel you're having difficulty measuring business impact, and I think we can address that for you very effectively today. And then a little less than half have a barrier of executive sponsorship or tech limitations. And only a few, this is great, right? Not very much resistance to new learning approaches. So that's good. You're in a mindset where you're ready to move forward and just need some help. So let's move on to the next.
Super. So let me share with you now the breakthrough innovations that have happened in this space. I could say the last 2 years, I'd say in particular for BTS with our clients in the last 12 to 18 months. And these are game changers from my perspective. And I would love, to Claude's point, when we're going to walk you through these now for the next 20 minutes or so. And if there's other things you are seeing and trying in your firms, we'd love to hear about it. So please add to the chat. One theme which I heard and I completely agree with is what's possible now with AI is it's no longer learning and development. It's more learning and doing. The ability to have super practical practice performance feedback in the moment is now real. And we're going to walk you through 3 different examples. One is AI simulation platforms and what that means for our clients, leveraged across the talent lifecycle. The other one is more micro. So AI conversational practice and live performance coaching, which is now a thing. And then what we're referring to as agentic simulations embedded in your tools. So your CRM, your systems, and what that means from not just a data perspective, but also a performance and a high performance perspective. So basically what's possible now is rapid compliant, obviously ISO certification, protecting our clients' data, and collaborative AI simulations built visually and updated instantly. Also updating in a hyper-personal way, depending on who the user is inside the simulations, and deployed globally are now possible. And let's kind of double click into each of the 3. What do we mean by AI simulation platforms? Somebody asked the question earlier, what do we mean by a simulation? Okay, this is a summary of the types of simulations that we've invented over the last 40 years with our clients. And I'll spend a little bit of time in the upper left and then the bottom right, which are 2 kind of opposing types of simulations. So the big simulations are when you model a company, an entire enterprise, or if you're in the energy sector, you would create a visual model of upstream, midstream, downstream, all of the operations, and you'd let your executives practice being the CEO of the firm so that they can ready themselves for a C-suite position. Or you might put your country managers in a simulation of running a country before you move them over there so they can practice what it's like to be a country leader for a year on the job. So these are big. We used to, like 15 years ago, have to call Microsoft because they were expanding the number of cells in terms of modeling the realities of our company's businesses. And so that's what we mean by enterprise simulation. They can also be used for strategy creation and strategy scenario planning with your company's executive teams. When you model something, by the way, it gets not only all hands on deck, but it makes it actually practical and real around the assumptions that your teams have around the future of their firm. Polar opposite type of simulation, down in the lower right-hand corner where it says leadership and cultural conversations. At the end of the day, culture is experienced one conversation at a time every day on the job. Your sellers have to have conversations with customers and they're making them feel a certain way about your brand and your offering. These are micro moment simulations. We are only simulating the conversation. We're simulating the moment, or we're simulating the meeting. And those might take 5 minutes or 10 minutes and are very visceral with very strong points of view on what great or high performance looks like for your people in that moment, in that conversation, given your strategy and culture. If you look at the bottom left, you'll see digital twin of the job. I have been hearing for 20 years the consternation of how valid are different types of assessments. Our view is the most valid way to observe somebody's readiness is to put them in the job, because you don't have time to have them try the job for a whole year. The second most effective way to do that is to put them in a simulation of the job, if in fact it's high fidelity. So that's what we mean by the bottom left is a very powerful way to assess for readiness. And then you see the different versions on the top. So if you go to the next slide, I'm going to give you an example of the power of a workflow simulation on the change side. There's been many times where clients have called us in about 18 months into a massive transformation. And what they've showed us is a transformation plan, 80-point plans, a lot of details. And what they say is, I have 800 teams that were supposed to be working in the new way, and they're not. They don't understand what the new way of working is supposed to look like. There's a lot of questions on why we're doing this. Can you help? Not to hit the point one more time, but I will do it. In the process of co-creating a simulation with the leaders above these 800 teams and with the teams, and then running 800 teams through the new way of working, makes them understand it. They're like, oh, now I get it. Now I understand how my Monday meetings have to change. Now I understand how I have to work with that team on a regular weekly basis. And now I can internalize and see how we're going to be successful. And that is often an unlock. People just need to run the play, right, before they have a chance to do it. And when you can unlock that, in this particular example, this company was able to save $2 billion in capital and finally move the company forward. So here's the point. If we go to the next slide. These simulations, as you can hear from me, are very, very high fidelity, high validity, because we get a higher return on that work. And we have retrofitted and updated and redesigned our simulation platforms across all of these different variabilities with AI. And for me, this is groundbreaking. This is 40 years in the making. It means we can now pump out one of these simulations in 2 days. It means our clients will still choose sometimes to do them slowly because of the power of the stakeholder alignment, but it means faster, cheaper. And in the really scaled simulations, our clients are doing them themselves. They're writing their own, they're creating their own scorecards, and they're pumping them out to the front line. Next slide, please, Claude. So if we go to the bottom right-hand corner, AI conversational practice and live performance coaching, what this means is every role play now can be done this way. Every moment or anything that you're practicing can be done through AI conversational practice. And I can tell you, it is more visceral, it is more memorable, it's more powerful. And the data that you get from these conversational practices is completely on point and beautiful. If we move to the next slide. Here's just some visuals. I'm sure many of you have started to practice with your own AI conversational bots or AI conversational practice. Some people prefer text, some prefer audio, and some prefer the avatar. We find giving people the choice is really important. Our platform on this is instant translation. We are using it right now in over 40 countries. We have 66 live clients. What we're learning on this is, no problem at all. Giving people access to this in your workshops, in your journeys, in your simulations, even in your offsites, is leading to high demand, ongoing practice, and people wanting to build their own for their own teams in a way that I honestly haven't seen before. I had dinner with 7 CHROs, heads of transformation, last night at dinner, and there was somebody there as well who said the exact same thing. She's like, goodbye are the days of powerful offsites, top 100 meetings, and we're hoping they're going to go back and use the tools and the content. This in particular is so easy to do, and it's driving high adoption, high usage. And I also, in some companies, it's the first time these people are actually using AI in a powerful way. So an early first move for those of you, if you're not doing this yet, think about updating any role play, any moment-based practice across your curriculum. Think about including this in a sales kickoff or a top 100 meeting, because you're going to get a wow. I promise you it'll be a wow experience. And it'll start to ready the organization for what's to come. Next slide, please. Oh, this is just an example quote, but I think we can move on. And finally, the third idea of what's possible now is the agentic simulations embedded in the tools. So I talked about the new AI simulation platforms, which gives us speed and much less expensive, and you can use them for scale. The micro simulations or the role plays now using AI conversational practice. And this takes it even to the next level. This is agentic simulations embedded in a CRM, for example. And we can influence the behavior change right in the flow of work, right before the person actually needs to have that customer conversation. If we go to the next slide. And I'll turn it over to Jody.
Well, thanks, Jess. So when I was in my former life working at Salesforce and leading 45,000 customer-facing people through their learning strategies, I thought a lot about scale. And when I left Salesforce, I did it to co-found a company that is really where I see this whole agentic enablement moving towards, and it is exceptionally exciting because we now have the ability to embed agents right where people work. And if you can imagine that every seller is going to need to role play before they get on the phone with a customer. And no manager on earth has time to role play with every single seller before they get on those calls. And so imagine if you could have the world's best sparring partner, or someone who knows everything about this customer. Absolutely everything about your sales methodology, your products, your pricing, your packaging, the latest messaging coming out of your PMM team, and they can practice it right before they pick up the phone or right before we go into the meeting. That is what Tough Customer is. And there was only one company that I wanted to partner with when we built this amazing tool, and that, of course, is BTS, because of their longstanding leadership in this area. And the idea of being able to extend simulations from those events or from those coaching moments really right into the flow of work. So it's built on the world's most innovative CRM, Salesforce, and that means that it has access to all of your data. And if there's one thing I know to be true about any enabler, it's that you have a lot of stakeholders. You have product, you have marketing, you have sales leaders, you have pricing leaders, and really by taking an agentic approach to your learning in the flow of work, you now have the ability for all of those stakeholders to be able to keep all of their messages up to date. And the agents will surface that latest content right in the flow of deals, and only when it's appropriate for that deal. So it's a very, very exciting time as an enabler to really rethink how you deliver content and where and when you deliver content. If we can go to the next slide, we can illustrate here just in a simple screenshot how it actually works. So here you would see a traditional Sales Cloud opportunity record, and embedded right in that record is the ability for a seller to pick any contact on that opportunity, to role play the conversation and get immediate feedback. So now I'm a seller, I'm in my car, I'm on my way to go have this really important customer meeting. And instead of just practicing into my car, I can actually have a conversation and get real feedback, real time for how I might better position it. So it's a new day and a new dawn when we think about scale and meaningful enablement and really driving KPIs. The KPIs are what I'd love to focus on for a moment now, if you could advance the slide, Claude. Because with these three types of agentic enablement, whether it's in the context of a big simulation or it's in the context of a moment of coaching or it's in the flow of work, we now have, as enablers, unprecedented data on how people are performing. We have unprecedented data on how ready someone might be for a new job or a new challenge that we're asking them to undertake. We have unprecedented data about how effective your strategy is. Maybe your strategy seems really great at the top, but the front lines are not adopting it. Well, you now have data that can tell you exactly why, because all of these agents are gathering it. They're gathering it through role playing. They're gathering it through the kind of coaching they're having to give back. They're gathering it through, the points they're not getting in the gamified simulation because they're all missing it. And all of this can really influence your strategy and make it a full circle. You're going to roll out a strategy, you're going to get data, you're going to figure out how you need to evolve the strategy. So if you go to the next slide, I would love enablers across the globe to really think differently about what kind of data you are using to measure the effectiveness of the change you are trying to drive. I think CSAT scores for programs are a thing of the past. And in the future, your data should be based on the KPIs that matter most to the business. It should be about ACV or revenues. It should be about pipe gen. Whatever your initiative is that you are trying to change, if it's in the example that Jess gave earlier in the factory, and maybe we're trying to reduce injury, okay? Whatever the KPI that matters the most to the business is to actually run the enablement, that's the KPI that we need to be able to measure. And when you take an agentic approach to your learning, you will have data that will give you a whole new seat at the table and a whole new level of visibility to the C-suite and all new input into the strategy that's being driven from that C-suite. So I think this is an incredibly exciting time to be an enabler, because this transformation is really not only rewriting how the work gets done, but it's rewriting your job too. And that is just a whole new world. So I think that's my last slide, Claude. I'm going to turn it back over to you.
So this has been great information, and just a reminder to everybody, if you have any questions now, if you have any comments, if you want to share your experiences, we'd love to hear them as we go. But I want to drill down a little bit now, Jody, and everything you talked about sounds pretty good, right? And it's very exciting. Let's drill down and see what this looks like in practice. So let's start by, if you could talk a little bit about why it's so difficult to turn a strategy or thoughts about simulation into actual action.
Sure, most definitely. I think that when we approach our learners with a big strategy or a big new idea, it starts off, everyone's very excited. There's a big vision, right? And we're going to do something different. And nobody really knows what that means. And so eventually the deck comes, right? Somebody has really flushed this vision out, and there's a beautiful deck, and that deck is going to go viral in your company. And it's very exciting because now we have the slides. But there's a big chasm between the slides that explain the strategy and changed behavior, right? Every good L&D person knows that the heart of everything we do is about from what to what. And in order to be able to really cross that chasm, we have to give our employees an opportunity to practice, to rehearse, to, get in there, get into that playground and try on new behaviors, because it's uncomfortable, okay? Change is always uncomfortable. I'm not necessarily sure And where I used to really see it break down would be you'd have very, very enthusiastic leaders in the training sessions, but they wouldn't necessarily know how to change their behavior. And when a leader doesn't change their behavior, the teams don't change their behaviors, right? And so by giving everyone a couple of practice rounds and the ability to work out the kinks in a simulated environment, we suddenly have leaders showing up with much more confidence about what good looks like. And we have people more eager to follow and try on new, uncomfortable, or different behaviors because they have a good support system. It was interesting to see that poll in the beginning, Claude, when it showed that people, were not really into role playing. I think that was one of your bottom scoring things, right? Okay, well, why don't people historically like role playing? Well, because role playing means I have to stand up in front of my peers or with my manager, and I have to try to do something different and still look competent. That is terrifying. That impression management is not fun, okay? But when you enter in an agentic solution, you remove all of the impression management. You just give people a chance to practice and to learn the new words, the new messages, the new pricing promo, the new workflow, and they feel more comfortable and they feel more confident in being able to move forward in a new direction.
But in order to do that and to take advantage of being able to practice, you've got to feel safe to do that before you actually jump in. And I think that that's one of the things that I've heard a lot of organizations that are in a different type of learning culture, where it's more about knowledge transfer and not about practice, is just getting people to feel good about doing that and feel safe about doing that is a challenge. Any thoughts about the process of getting people to the point where they feel like the playground to try new behaviors is a safe place that they can really take advantage of?
Well, I think you will in any situation for any good learning, Claude, what you want to do is you want to come up with the right use cases. You want to look at what's going on in my business that is really I can't fail situation where this is mission critical, and we need people to really come to the table with an open mind and ready to learn. And so there's a few thoughts that I would have about that. The first is, where I have seen great success with simulations is, first of all, in just levels of participation. You have to know that these are fun. Okay, this is exciting. This is engaging. This isn't just learning. This is culture building. This is networking. This is, an experiential, hands-on, good time, frankly. So you're going to get high levels of participation whenever you lead with this kind of innovative experience. So with that as a baseline, and then you start looking for, well, what are the opportunities? So I've had great success with these when we've opened up new industries, for example. If I am really needing to put a whole bunch of people into a new industry and get them comfortable speaking the language of the customer, right? Understanding this unique industry's pain points and things that resonate and matter and the data points that matter, just getting those words out of your mouth and comfortable. That's a great example of a simulation. Lots of companies get into message certification. Hey, we're changing our positioning. We need everyone to be on message. Well, no managers like certifying all of their people. It's timely. It takes a lot of time, and they rubber stamp them. But if you make it an agentic certification, you're going to see much higher quality yields because they're really going to have to get the message right, or the agent isn't going to pass them. So you can go really fast. You don't get bottlenecked, and you get a higher quality result. You can also look at whole strategy changes. I've seen companies do this when we have had to do massive sales methodology changes, and you have to get all global teams aligned to new deal stage exit criteria, right? Okay, well, what does that look like? What do I do when? It's giving them that playground to try it out.
One of the things that we've suggested, let me know what you think of this, when people have a hard time getting going, is just trying to find a few people, a few champions who will get enthusiastic at the beginning and try it and maybe tell other people about it. And so if people are, if your culture is such that people are afraid or a little tentative about trying new things, getting a few champions who can do it and then share the experience and get other people excited can really be helpful, I think.
I absolutely agree with that. And I think as, as people in this learning space, something so innovative like this, you're going to have to be the champion first. And in order to recruit those other executive champions across the board, I highly encourage you to think first about how you're going to measure success and how you're going to speak the language of those champions in really putting some data in front of them that will build confidence that this is going to work, right? So I'd mentioned earlier, these are really, really fun. So participation, that is a good metric. But I would also say looking at being able to talk about how you're going to see an increase in pipe gen or how you're going to see an increase in revenues. In my last job, we would always do a snapshot of where we were at as a business before the training and then 30, 60, 90 days out. And every time we would do a simulation, Claude, and we did them with BTS. I am not shy about saying this. But every time we would do one, we would see, a 20% uplift in pipe generation. That was extraordinary. And we would have been happy with just that. But even more so, we would then go on to see a 30% increase in revenues. And that was simply because the pipe was such high quality, because we really got those learners to understand at the base level exactly how every step of their job was going to change. And that type of adoption is incredible. And, BTS has hundreds of data points that you can use, as you try to introduce this into your company and you try to shop for your champions, let them give you the case studies and the data points that you need. Because speaking the language of your customer is just as important as your company speaking the language of their customers.
And I think the measurement philosophy you just talked about is something that a lot of companies struggle with. We have conversations all the time with people who just can't get their hands around what they call their measurement methodology. But what I'm hearing you say is if you start with a business goal that you may be struggling with, then you basically address that by backing that up with, okay, how do I get people comfortable to do this so that I get the business objective that I want? It makes measurement and making the business case so much easier. And it's really not complicated.
I absolutely, very, very well said. You need to have data if you want a seat at the table. That's how you get the seat at the table. That's it. It's the whole secret to surviving and thriving in a corporate environment. Have the data. Have the data. And if your training does not have data that is compelling, you don't get a seat. It's just that simple. So you have to start looking at different ways to gather data. It will never come from a CSAT score, right? But when you start moving into some of these agentic solutions, you will have more data than you know what to do with. And you will be able to build programs and simulations that are specifically designed to drive the KPIs your internal customers are looking for. So yes, when you are trying to drive a simulation culture, the very first thing you need to do is you need to pick what is most important to the company. What can the business not fail at? And what is the KPI they are going to use to be able to measure success there? The second thing you need to do then is get the ROI proof points that simulations are the most efficient and effective way to drive that change. I saw that time and again with the 45,000 people that we had to mobilize each and every year. And BTS has no shortage of data points that you can leverage to be able to help build that case. And then I would say the third thing is, based on it being October 15th, is that everyone is in conversations about company kickoff. Okay. And this is when we are strategy setting. And this is when we're figuring out how we're going to fine tune the culture and reinvent the strategy and mobilize and energize your teams. And now is the exact time to be introducing a simulation experience. I assure you that every single planner of kickoff is looking for something that is going to be fun, that is going to be energizing, that's going to be memorable, that's going to create great networking experiences and impactful learning. And like ding, 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 like all green check marks as far as the eye can see is what a simulation into that kind of environment is going to be. It's going to bring energy and intensity that's really needed to make this an incredibly memorable and engaging event.
We have a little time, so I thought maybe we'd handle a couple of questions. And AT asked about any guidance we might have, and I think Jess kind of gave a quick answer here in the chat, but maybe we could get into it a little bit. Any guidance on how to introduce leveraging these tools in an environment that's focused on reducing their tech stack? Can these systems replace other systems that prove impact and efficiency?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And in, I mean, in the case of Tough Customer, it's going to integrate right into a platform you're probably already using, which is Salesforce. So you do not need to keep setting up different stacks and to make this work. It's very much designed to work in the flow of work, or to be a situation that it's not even your stack to manage. That, in the case of BTS, they've already done all of that hard work and you just need your users to log in. So very, very easy. And appreciate the comment too, because I do think with all of the agentic movement that's happening out there, people are looking at their tech stacks. And I don't think this is something you have to worry about bringing up. This is something that can be embedded or outsourced completely.
Just any other thoughts on this?
Well, when Jody was talking, I think it's pretty incredible that what she did at Salesforce, they have 45,000 people on the go-to-market side. And for sales kickoff, they built simulations and alignment experiences that were unforgettable for 45,000 people around the world. And people would go in person or they would do virtual teams. And that for us, as we look around our global clients, kind of sets the bar for speed and scale and using that process to hone the priorities for the field, right? Either for the year or for the quarter, depending on how quickly your company shifts up priorities and focus. But that started to create an expectation culturally that when there was a new message or a time to reskill, you'd quickly do it through a simulation and it would just be practical and fast and teams would do it together. So that was just one comment. I think the other one is to balance out our talk about AI. We are hearing a lot of companies who are concerned about their employee engagement and the strength of the culture right now and the lack of relational feelings that employees are having with each other, right? Still from the years following COVID. So I just want to balance this and say there's also a coming back of IRL in real life. We are seeing people wanting to have people come together, whether that's in even like traditional workshop format or just the top 50 or the top 1,000. Companies are choosing to do that right now. And I think it's because not only do they want to fire them up and get them excited about next year, but they also want to strengthen the culture. Right. So making sure when they show up that it's not just butts and seats and listening to executives on stage, but they have a chance to roll up their sleeves and build, the future direction together and practice and strengthen those relationships so that they can rely on each other in the days to come and make sure they stay in the company.
Just a little bit of an extraneous point I wanted to make when you were talking about the ability to scale at 45 people. When we talk about that kind of scaling to some of our clients, they said, "Yeah, okay, that's great for a big company, but we're really small," and they make it sound as though this is scaling only for 45 or 100,000 people. If you can do it for 45 or 75 or 100,000 people, you can do it for 300 people. You can do it for 40 people. It's not something to be scared of. The scale is if you're big, then the barriers you have of scaling are going away. But if you're small, it's still very easy to use.
So I guess I would also just like us to expand our view of what scale means. Scale isn't about size. Scale is about speed. So every time there's a new competitive offering and you need to adjust your messaging, you want scale. You don't want people to take 30 days of pitching an old message that your competition is now eating your lunch for 30 days. You know, speed is the currency of success here. And I think that when we say scale, you really want to think about adoption and shortening that change behavior curve and being able to ensure that your training is always cutting edge and relevant. And that is what all of these solutions now provide you the ability to do. If in the morning there is a new position that you need everyone to immediately start using, and you put hands on keyboards and you hit enter, and all of the agentic coaches that your teams have access to are now on message, you have just written and deployed at scale. And if it's 10 people, great. And if it's 45,000 people, great. It's the same process. It's speed, not volume.
And the speed, great point. And the speed is so important. And we talk to our clients all the time about that. They're always say they're overwhelmed with the amount of content they're asked to produce and the number of objectives that they're asked to address. And at the same time, they continue to be a little bit scared of AI, thinking it might take their job, or they're not sure how to use it, or they're not fully literate in it. And it's really, and I talk about this all the time, AI, not just for simulations, but in general, can allow you to move at the speed of the business. And this is just one great example, but we need in learning to really embrace AI and what it can do for us, not be scared of it, but how it can help us so that we can do more and think more strategically and have a better impact on the business. And these are, I think, some of the best examples with simulations, but there are other examples as well.
Definitely, I definitely agree. And I think, you know, look, an agentic learning strategy is new for everyone. And I think, you know, if you are trying to figure out like, hey, I know I need to do this. I know my company would love for me to do this. I don't know how to do this. Don't worry about it. You can see on the screen right here, the simulation culture at bts.com. Just drop us a message. We are super happy to help you, you know, think through what a use case might be, and, you know, help you understand how quickly we might be able to put something together for you that really scales with a scaling of a speed and where you can get in there and you can learn and you can see how fast this can go. I would argue that doing this is really an acceleration for your career, not a deterrent for your career, because we know that people are chat GPTing all the time and, you know, taking their questions about how to go position themselves to a customer or how to reduce risk in the factory. You know, it's much better for it to come from you than a system that hasn't really been well-versed or trained on the strategy as a whole.
Great point. Any final words to wrap up before we got one more poll question? Any things you just want to reiterate or do as a few takeaways?
I would just say, given the range of maturity across organizations right now on their own AI dexterity and implementation, and I'd say most companies are still pretty early, right? I have been delighted and surprised by the reaction from leaders in an organization when HR training gives them an AI first approach, because it actually is giving them permission to play with AI. And there are real big benefits to that then back on the job that we weren't intending. We're intending to make them have higher fidelity practice, but it almost just builds a confidence and an energy around AI that a lot of the organizations still need to find.
Jody, anything from you?
Jump in. What are you waiting for? It's happening, people.
Okay, let's take a look at, you've heard all this. And so our final question before we wrap up, we've got our raffle contest, and I have a couple of questions that have come in that we can cover in the next couple of minutes as well. But this final poll question first, what are the most compelling reasons for your organization to invest in simulation-based learning? And you can select any of these. And if something you're thinking about isn't on this list, feel free to put it in the chat too. So the choices are, can you use them for accelerating leadership readiness for critical roles, or improving strategic decision-making capabilities, enabling sales practice, a safe practice rather of high-stakes scenarios, scaling consistent learning experiences globally, strengthening culture and employee belonging, preparing the workforce for AI-driven transformation, or if there's other things that you're thinking of that's not on the list, again, feel free to put them in the chat and share with everyone. And so things are coming in, and the answers are pretty split, but the biggest percentage here is accelerating leadership readiness for critical roles. And maybe Jess and Jody, you can maybe expand on some good examples or ways to go about that. 54% say scaling consistent learning experiences globally. And then the next most frequent answer is enabling safe practice for high-stakes scenarios.
One of our pharma bio clients is absolutely leading edge in using high fidelity job simulations or digital twins of the job to assess readiness for critical roles. They have 53 critical roles in the company, from chief scientist to chief data, whatever, to country leader, to sales leader, and so forth. And we have built custom job simulations for every single one of those critical roles. Every year, they put a handful of people through them. And the purpose is obviously developmental, but very clear data-driven summaries of where the person is ready for the next job and where they're not. And of course, when you do that, you also then get people to say, yeah, no, thank you. I thought I wanted this job, but it's not for me. I'm very happy where I am, which is also
okay.
very, very valuable for an organization. So.
Jody, anything you want to add before we move on?
What are you waiting for? No, I'm okay.
Okay, we've got time for a couple of questions. First, real quick, Ivy, who's our producer today, who's the winner of our raffle?
Thank you, Claude. I'm thrilled to share that Amanda Varnador has won a complimentary Excellence in Action program submission. Congratulations, Amanda. We'll be reaching out shortly with more details.
Great, thanks.
Claude, there was a question in one of the forums, the Q&A one at the bottom, around will they have access to this recording? So maybe.
Oh, yes, everybody will get the slide deck and the recording within 24 hours. Absolutely. So one thing that occurred to me, and we had somebody touch on this, maybe it wasn't a question, but you mentioned a couple of times in passing AI coaching. And can we talk a little bit more about the advent of AI coaching, how it ties in and it can be part of simulations, and the role you see it playing in personalized development as we go forward?
Yeah, I think it's going to be enormously important, and it's going to grow in its power, right? And from what we have right now in terms of BTS capabilities in the market, we have 3 different forms of AI coaching. We touched on 2 of them today. The first one is a very simple AI conversational bot practice, right? That's a form of coaching. The second one is the agentic coaching or the agentic simulations in the CRM, which Jody went into depth on. The third one is you think more about traditional coaching, which is meant for vertical development to mature your leaders, to help them have their own like self-awareness and be able to shift their own mindsets, right? We have 20 years of mindset shifting data across our coaching practice that we have used to build our AI coaching from that lens offering to the market. What I think is important in all 3 is that all 3 have been designed from an AI perspective to build muscle and to build capability, as opposed to the AI doing something for your people, which I think is, if you're looking at partners and vendors, you need to keep that in mind right now, given AI continuing to mature your people. And to Jody's point around data, what's really amazing right now is in the clients where we have all 3, right? Plus the strategy simulations, it gives us and our buyers an unparalleled view of both the company's strategy and what performance is looking like on a day-to-day basis. So which groups and leaders and individual contributors have certain strengths? Where are the gaps from a talent and a performance perspective? And when you can combine the insights from the more traditional coaching with the practice on the job, with the training practice, it's a new day of organizational alignment or misalignment and knowing where the gaps are.
Any other closing comments before we wrap? No, we're good. I just take another second to talk about the offer of contacting BTS at simulationculture@bts.com. I know that when we have clients who sit down and have a conversation about what they'd like to do, maybe the difficulty they're having on getting their hands around a new concept, having a conversation with somebody who really knows what they're doing and can provide some guidance and kind of create an aha moment for you, it can be really, really helpful. And this is a great offer that BTS is making. And I think if you're having trouble getting started and you think having a conversation will help, this is a great way to do that with absolutely no risk. So with that, I just want to thank you, Jess and Jody, for a great session. Really appreciate your insights. Thank you to everybody who took time out of their busy day to join us today. For folks who registered but weren't able to make it, we will share, once again, the recording and the slides afterwards. We thank you again to everybody, and we hope to see you again soon on a Brandon Hall Group webinar. Thanks, everybody. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you, Claude. Thanks, everyone.
Bye.